Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Smarter HR podcast. Welcome. And looks like we have a little bit of a mystery that we're unraveling today. Today's title is called Why Your Employees Are Really Leaving. And the presenter is Rod Lacey. My name is Steve Pleim. I have a recruiting and staffing company called Talent Team. We're headquartered in West Valley City, and we've been around for almost 50 years, if you can believe that, our company has.
It's amazing.
So if you wouldn't mind, let's do a little introduction, huh? Rod, you're the presenter today. Introduce yourself.
Rod Lacey with Sunstone HR, a fractional HR consulting firm.
Clay Kelly, Stratus HR. We're a PEO.
Stephanie Lyon, also Stratus HR.
All right, thank you very much. So let's get going. Let's jump right in. Rod, you've been around the HR business a while, too.
I have been. Yeah, that's a nice way to say I'm older.
No, come on.
We're not starting that again.
No. Well, you've noticed that that people leave for a variety of reasons, and they say a variety of things. The title of your presentation today is Why Your Employees Are Really Leaving. But it sounds like you're not so sure that what they say is really true.
Yeah, I think a lot of employers get it wrong. The data in your HR system is going to tell you one thing, and you might draw conclusions from that, but it's not really why it's happening. I mean, I've been watching employee exits for my whole career, largely on the corporate side, and I know what those statistics say. 60% or 70% of your people are leaving because they have a better job offer, right? And if that's what your database is likely saying, you might be reacting to that, and you might be making business decisions on that because why? It's clean, it's measurable, but it's almost always wrong. That's not why your people are leaving the organization. People don't leave companies just because they got a job offer. That process actually started before then, and we're going to talk about that disconnect as we go through today's discussion, because when we really understand why people are leaving, all of a sudden it becomes actionable. If we react to the statistics that your HR system is going to show you, you're counter-offering, you're raising your wages, you're reacting to the wrong end of the spectrum. So I'd like to do a few things as we spend the time together today. I want to talk about the workforce as it is today. It's an interesting environment. There's a lot of different things happening. And we'll talk about the environment, its impact on the employee experience. We'll then break down this real reason for turnover. And I call it a bad day theory. And there's probably a scientific term for it. But that's what I call it. So we're gonna stick with that. But then we're going to talk about what leaders can do to really, truly impact the retention of their employees. So that's kind of the stage for the day. But let me just jump in. So how are employees feeling about things today? I love Gallup. I'm a statistical nerd, and that's why I like to speak to like the real reason for turnover. I've been analyzing this stuff for my whole career. But Gallup says that 51% of our employees are looking for work. Okay, that's 51% are looking for work. It might be passive, it might be active, but they're open to a new opportunity. That's kind of scary. Your workforce probably feels quite stable right now, but we're going to talk about that in a minute too. So Gallup also shares that only about 30% of your employees are engaged, actively engaged at work. So that means you have 70% that are either, they call it neither engaged or not engaged. They just say you're just going through the motions is a nice way to say it. Or there's 15% at the end of the spectrum that are actively disengaged. They hate their job. So we're not talking about the fringe here that are at risk of leaving your organization. This is the core of your organization. 50% might be looking for work. 70% are going through the motions or are disengaged. You've got more volatility in your workforce than you might think. Are we seeing any signs of volatility out there that any of you have seen?
Well, you know, it doesn't take much some days, it seems like. You know, it's different than it used to be, let's say. You know, people are not hanging around like they once were. But the financial analyst types are saying that we're in this environment where it's no fire, no hire. So there aren't that many changes, it seems like, going on, but it sounds like you're saying there's an undercurrent of dissatisfaction still.
Yeah, that's what the statistics would say.
Yeah, you know, I've seen various renditions of that survey over the years, and what always surprises me is when you look at the percentage of people that are high performers that leave the organization because of management and leadership's failure to deal with those that are actively disengaged.
So true. Yeah, it's there's a whole nother topic we should go into sometime about that actively disengaged group, but that's a different topic for a different day. But yeah, we do need to address all ends of that spectrum. So those are old statistics. Engagement has been relatively flat for a long time. We haven't changed that. Your organization's turnover is probably very consistent with history too. It might actually be lower right now. So organizations might be lulled into this complacency, thinking that, we're doing okay. Everyone's sticking around. Everyone's having a good time. Engagement might be up. Turnover's manageable. And you might completely ignore what's really going on. The statistics would say that your employees are at risk of leaving. Clay, to your point, again, whether it's whatever the analysts have called it, they'll call it the great freeze, no hire, no fire, people aren't leaving. And it's not because they love their jobs. It's because there's so much uncertainty out there. So think about what's going on in the market today. And again, if you have any other indicators or signs, I'd love to hear those. But layoffs are up. 2025 was the single biggest layoff year since COVID began, since the pandemic. It's scary. But layoffs are up. And there are some people that would say that CEOs are AI washing, they call it. They're using AI as an excuse to clean house. So no hire, no fire, get more efficient, And so it's become more prevalent than ever. Job openings are down because we're not backfilling. We think we can become more effective with AI, so let's not backfill. And so employees' risk tolerance is simply low. So the workforce might feel stable right now, but you might actually just have captives. They're grateful to be employed, and so they're risk averse, and they're not looking for work.
So maybe the employees are not satisfied, but they're not moving. But as an HR professional, what does this mean to me? I just want them to be happy, and I want them to be effective. So give me the magic formula.
I think I'm stuck on what you were talking about with assuming, and we know what the saying is around assuming. So if
Please tell us.
not on an HR
let me
show,
get a
not on an HR show.
Hold on.
But to your point, there's been a lot of reduction in force. Everybody's hearing that, AI is going to take over jobs. So, really, as far as performance and really getting the most out of employees, it's scary to think that employers would assume that everything's okay. And I think that when people get complacent, they stop doing the things that they need to do, like the exit interviews when people do leave or the stay surveys.
That's a huge risk. And Clay, Steve, we're going to get to your point. But yes, complacency is a risk. And there's a lot going on that says we shouldn't be complacent. But there's also a lot of statistics that would say it's okay. Things are going just fine. So I want to break down the employee experience right now. So again, we know what companies are doing. Let's talk about the impact that has on employees. As we wrap this up, I'm going to talk about some of the indicators that are out there that would prove the point that employees are not all the way engaged. So if you see any indicators, want to throw any thoughts in, please do. So let's talk about the employee experience today. Again, we can just lead with layoffs. Again, our colleagues have been laid off. They haven't been replaced, no hire, no fire. And my boss, CEO, says we're going to be way more efficient with AI. And so I've been asked to do more with less. So, and I get the layers of supervision are lower, so I'm not getting as much feedback as I used to. I'm supposed to use this AI tool. I'm down 30% on my team. I've got this burden. I've got this stress. I'm grateful I survived, but I'm worried about my own job security because everyone else is getting laid off. It's not a great environment in most organizations today. Now, there are exceptions, right? But just generally speaking, I've never seen layoffs more broad-based than I have in the last year. Wow. So it will be general in the approach. But it's not the best environment for the employees. So, again, the employer might think things are going fine. But the employee experience would not say that it is. Again, Gallup statistics are what they are, but this is what we're doing to the employees. And so what are the signs that the employees are not having the best of experience. Again, I think about quiet quitting. That's a term that's come up in the last few years. And on the employee side, I've heard employees refer to it as quiet thriving. So you think about that, yeah. So it's just, again, it's not, so the employer sees it as they've checked out, but the employee says, I'm good. I'm doing the bare minimums. I'm going through the motions. I get my paycheck. I'm not worried about the organization, its results, objectives, So quiet thriving is a thing. Revenge quitting. We've seen that, in the tech industry where dozens of people will quit at the same time. And then the no-notice quitting is something that's growing. To me, it just shows extreme disrespect for the organization. So,
is it like ghosting?
It really is. And so what if you think about that? I grew up in an era where you never burned a bridge. Mm-mm. You might have hated your job, but you gave your notice and you worked your notice and you smiled on the way out the door because you never knew if you might need a reference or not. Yeah. There's a growing trend today of just no notice quits. They just don't show up to work on Monday. You call them, oh, I'm done. And it blows my mind. But that is a growing trend in today's workforce. But so what do these things evidence? It evidences a disconnect between the employee experience and the employer's perception of that experience. Again, if we're going to be disrespectful, quiet quit or whatever, no notice resignations, revenge resignations, we're not doing okay. That relationship is at risk. So again, it's not just a trend. These are signs coming from the organization that things are not well.
We talk sometimes with customers about these very things. I'm sure you guys do too, because it's so frustrating for hiring managers and people who don't study this. It's like, the whippersnappers are not, blah, blah, blah. And so we talk about how you can be the old guy in the park playing checkers and complaining, or you can start to figure out that your job really is to manage the problem and not complain about the problem. So let's talk how to, get past it.
I love that. And Steve, I love the fact that you brought generations into it because you talked about the old guy playing checkers in the park. But in these young whippers, it is so easy to blame it on Gen Z, Gen X, Gen Y. No. Employees are human beings. Leadership is leadership. Preventative strategies are preventative strategies. We've talked in multiple podcasts about the importance of communication, the importance of culture, the importance of leadership. Those things don't change. So I love the fact that we do have this quick out. Oh, it's just the new generation. In 10 years, we'll be talking about the next generation and all of their challenges. Mm-hmm. There are certain principles that hold true, and we got to make sure that we're doing those things. And so that plays into this.
The interesting thing is when you do go back and you look at those statistics in those surveys that come out of Cornell or they come out of SHRM or they come out of all these things, just as you said, those statistics haven't dramatically changed. I do see a trend where you have, especially those that are working remote, certainly there's productivity levels or concerns that it takes somebody special to be very disciplined to work remote. But then you also have those that are working multiple jobs. And that is a real problem. Or had a situation a number of years ago where outside sales, lots of freedom. Guy made some sales right off the bat, thought he was having a great year, looked at his quarter numbers, sat down, had a conversation with him, and long story short, we were going to go on an appointment or two that afternoon, and he never showed back up. Oh. We found out he never left his previous job.
Yeah, that's called theft, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's pretty dishonest.
Yeah. That could be a whole conversation in itself, talking about side hustles But I think to kind of bring it back to engagement and even bringing up, the different generations. I think one of the things that kind of strikes me is if we're assuming, and employers can make all kinds of excuses of maybe what's not going right, I think some of it really comes down to being intentional And the statistics that you shared are very shocking. And if we are assuming that everything's okay, or, hey, this is an employer market, we have the greater advantage than the employees, then how many organizations are not trying to be intentional and work with the younger generations to find out, hey, what would engage you more?
Yeah, I love that, Stephanie. That's a thought we need to have in our mind all the time. Regardless of whether it's the employer market or the employee market, it's just we have to have a commitment to our employees. They are there working for us. They are there supporting our brand, and just we can't take advantage of certain markets and conditions. And so this kind of bringing it back. The employees are a little more disrupted than it might appear. And employers are maybe not thinking that way because they're sitting still. We're getting away with big changes, layoffs, not replacing people, and everyone stays just fine. So, but I want to transition a little bit to more statistics, no surprise. But let's talk about why people are leaving. So we're going to get into your databases, every employer out there, what your database is like to show you. But before we get there, let's go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. 60% of all U.S. turnover is voluntary, which means that people chose to leave the organization. And so why might they leave? So again, I'm going to go back to Gallup. I'm going to go through some percentages real quick, but 74% of people would cite compensation as one of the reasons they left the organization. Okay, and so and these numbers are going to add up to more than 100%. 43% had to do with workplace flexibility. Think about the return to office mandates and things we have going now. 30% unsustainable work expectations. Again, if we've downsized and you're expected to do more with less, that makes sense. 21% lack of career development, and there's others in there about uncaring leadership. So when people leave, they cite multiple reasons. And so let me bring a couple of the statistics together here. If 60% of your turnover in your HR system is for a better job offer, and Gallup just told us that 74% of all exits have a compensation reason tied to it, we've got a compensation problem, right?
100%.
Okay. Now, I've spent hours of my life, I don't know how many days of my life, defending the principle that compensation is not always the issue. I've been challenged in executive meetings where Rod is not being responsive to the salary crisis we're having right now, because as a manager, you might react to my last 3 people have left because they've got better job offers. Therefore, we are not competitive in our pay. Seems logical, right? And I've had CEOs challenge me. We are losing people for better job offers, Rod. Why are we not reacting to compensation here? And so it's not necessarily a compensation problem. It could be. And an astute HR person can figure out whether you do have a compensation problem or not. But let's think about this. When each of us has left an organization before, did you leave for a worse job offer? No. Don't we all make changes when we get a better job offer? So doesn't it make sense that most of us, when we change jobs, list compensation as a reason, right?
Well, how are you going to grow if you don't ask for more from somebody and get a job that you see as better?
That's right.
Isn't that called growth?
That's called growth.
And are you angry at me because I'm growing beyond what you're offering me? Yeah.
That's a great point. Yeah. So again, doesn't it make sense that, of course, that, again, of course we leave when we get a better job offer. And so, yes, the HR statistics in your database are going to show compensation and people leaving for better opportunity as the number one reason why people leave your organization. Of course it does. That was the ticket out the door. That's what justified the exit, but that is not what started the search for the new opportunity. And that's what I want to talk about. So does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So again, we leave when we get the better job offer, but why did we start looking? This is why I want to bring out, my bad day theory. We started looking when we had a bad day at work. So let's talk about bad days. What are the bad days we might have at work? It's the day where we just leave the meeting and things didn't go our way. You thought you had approval, but approval was pulled away. A new policy gets rolled out, and it just undercuts some of the efforts you're trying to do. Someone got promoted, and you did not. It's the favorite of the boss, or you perceive some inequity, something like that. you're not listened to, you feel stuck, you're overwhelmed, you've been, your team has been reduced in size, your role has been changed, and it's not what you used to enjoy doing. We have these days where we leave meetings or leave an event or leave work at the end of the day and just, man, that sucked. That wasn't a great day. That's not what I wanted. And you start to question your choice in joining that employer. Am I happy here? Am I not? So that's where it begins. It begins as a bad day. That one bad day doesn't necessarily start the turnover, but it opens the door. And bad days accumulate over time. It's been shown that employee engagement at a particular employer decreases a little bit over time. That's because we have more bad days over time. But it is these bad days that trigger the eventual job offer where employees leave. Does that make sense?
Sure.
They compound.
Yeah.
It's as you're talking, and I'm listening to you and thinking about what you're saying. I'm remembering that folks will come up in our staffing organization. They'll come to us and say, "I'm looking for a job," and one of the things we talk to them about is, "What do you think is the right level of compensation?" Well, I think I really need $20 an hour for these kind of entry level jobs. Okay, isn't it interesting that they know that there's 21s out there? And they know there are 22s out there, but they don't feel like they really can get a 21 or 20. I'm a 20, So if I take a $20 an hour job and sooner or later, a couple months later, I'm going, I'm a 21.
And I'm only paid 20.
And now I'm looking for a 21.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you have a compensation problem, or do you have a problem in your communication with that employee and not understanding their feelings? So am I allowed to change my feelings? And does that change my perspective on my job?
Well, I think there's that and just a whole mental health piece to it.
Yeah.
There's people are stressed. And so maybe, and I love your bad day theory. So maybe they have a bad day and then another couple of days, they have a not so great day, but because of the first bad day, it now makes it even worse, like it exacerbates, like you said.
Yeah.
Well, we've talked about when we were discussing recruiting that there are situations where people here have identified that's somebody I want to work for me. So that person that might be a good new member of your organization, if they have enough bad days, that works into, them potentially being recruited.
Yeah.
Just needs that last one. So
That's right.
So if we break these two things apart, so employers might react to what their database says. Everyone's leaving for compensation. And so if you're trying to address that, what do? Do you counter offer? Those don't work. People are going to leave anyway. You're not addressing the root issue. Do you raise everyone's wages? No employer can sustain that reaction, right? So if you're focused on what your database tells you about exits, it's not actionable, and not reasonably so. But if we focus on the bad days, that's where we can play. That literally is where we as HR leaders, as leaders organization, can have a proactive impact on the employee experience. So again, we can focus on fixing manager behavior, workload expectations, the feedback we're giving, psychological safety, having growth conversations with employees. We can do a lot if we focus earlier in the equation. The great news is it's so actionable. Whereas if you wait till exit interviews are great, but if you wait to react on just the exit interview, it's too late.
Yeah.
You're getting good data, but you can't save those top performers. You can't save those employees.
Stephanie is really, really great at promoting stay surveys within our client base. And I'm not sure that prior to us working together that I'd ever really heard about a stay survey. But just about every client discussion, she's talking about let's put aside exit interviews and let's talk about why do people stay.
Yeah, that's perfect. And let's talk about that. I love that example, and that's going to be one of the things I recommend. So, again, the great organizations, you do exit interviews. You need to know those things, right? But that doesn't drive your retention. that's too late in the game. And so a stay interview with your employees is a great way to go. So I love that suggestion. Clients, employees, it might be overwhelming. Maybe you've got 1,000 employees or 500 employees. Start with your top 10 or 20%. Focus on those and ask them revealing questions. Ask them to disclose, get them in a comfortable spot. Maybe it's over a meal, but you just say, what are the things you most enjoy about working here? Find out what works for them and amplify those things. I always like to ask, in the last 60 days, what was the one thing that frustrated you the most? Or what are we getting at? We're getting at the bad day, right? And if I can remove that bad day, I can prolong that employee's tenure.
With a conversation. You can remove the bad day by just having a conversation to just say, I love it.
And it's not just that, Clay. I mean, you can be at, if there's something that needs to be changed, you can address it. But sometimes just being heard is the resolution.
Yeah.
Having a sincere conversation with someone can be the entire resolution of the issue. And so, and again, I'm not saying shortcut it by just listening to people. I'm saying find actionable items. But the stay interviews, I'm the biggest advocate for those. People sometimes get overwhelmed. I can't really talk to every employee. Start small. Start small, but do that. Have a very, very open conversation. Take notes, aggregate the data, share it, whether it's the executive that's doing it or the HR team that's doing it. That's research. That is incredibly valuable information. Implement it, act on it. I'm a huge advocate for regular engagement surveys too. Whether you call it a satisfaction survey or an engagement survey, I always recommend you have a third party do it. And the reason I say that, don't do it. I mean, a Google form is fine, but employees will always be skeptical about the protection of their information. Am I going to get fired for sharing the truth? It's a natural tendency. People want it to be completely confidential. So that's why I like to use either a third-party tool or bring someone in to do it, just because you want what's really going on. You want that full disclosure for the employees, but get that download. Be very selective in the questions you ask. Ask the right questions. Get quantitative feedback, scores. Break it out by department so you can see exactly where your hot and cold spots are. But look thoroughly at the open-ended responses. There's so much good information there. So study that, absorb it, and the most important point I would make is share the information. I turned down a client one time because they wanted me to come in and help them because engagement was so low. I read the survey results, and I started to prep them. Okay, well, let's talk about how we're going to share this with the employees. So we're not going to share it with the employees. No way. And I said, I can't do that because that disclosure, that vulnerability is part of that leadership equation. You've got to have that.
100%.
How often do you do those sorts of surveys? I'm assuming you are advocating for regular surveys, take the temperature on a regular basis.
I do. So if we do a larger survey, I would say no more than every 6 months. Again, there's a lot of data to download. It may be contingent on the size of the employer. But what I like, and some organizations do this really well, is a pulse survey. So they take a stratified example or sample of the company. Maybe they take 20%, every 2 weeks, and just through Slack gather a little pulse on how things are going. So you really have this little heartbeat of the organization going throughout the year. And so maybe, if you're going to do simple ones that are not impacting everyone, you could do it quite often. If you're going to do a big one, there is truly survey fatigue. And so you need to make sure you're not asking too much too often, or you're going to see participation go down. And if you don't share the results, your participation will plummet too. And so if people see that it's a real tool, those tools will become more effective for you over time. People will recognize things happen. Executives listen. And so those surveys will become even more valuable. Same questions, but more valuable year over year as you use them. And as you go year over year, you can compare your results. We're 2 points higher than we were a year ago today. And things like that really show where employees' hearts and minds are really at. And they point to everything that you might need to fix. All of those bad days are captured in those open-ended comments.
I'd add it's a good idea to get executive buy-in too, not just the HR department, because without the leadership, the surveys tend to go nowhere. And then the employees are answering questions and wondering, why didn't you ever act on anything I had to say? And when in our customer base, sometimes when we talk to leadership about it, we hear them say, you know what, I'm not going to invest a bunch of money in that, so I just don't want to go down that road. They're going to want me to do this and this. And it's surprising when we do it how inexpensive, some of the things are. Like, can you clean the snow off the sidewalk so I'm not getting snow in my shoes on my way in the door in the morning? It's often just stuff like that.
Yeah, employers can even find things in those open-ended comments that maybe they intended to do anyway. Again, maybe you've got a plan where you were thinking about changing something up. Give the employees credit for the suggestion. Based on your suggestions in this survey, let me tell you something we're going to do. Again, just tie results and activity to the feedback you've been given.
Yeah.
So one other suggestion I've got is a true open door policy. Every company says they have an open door policy. But think about the average employee. CEO says, come in anytime. I've reported to CEOs most of my career, and I wouldn't do that, even though they say it. So think about the reality behind your open door policies. Are they truly open? Do people see examples of your approachability? Are you finding ways to sit with them and talk with them instead of forcing them to come through your open door? So just that communication, isn't it funny how communication comes up with everything we talk about here? But just communicate, open doors. Someone walks by and you say, how are you doing? And say, fine, how are you? No, how are you really doing? Make them stop. Make them recognize, I want more than a superficial exchange here. I really want to listen. So without tools where you have a good flow of information, that silence accelerates the exit. If the employee is having bad days and has no outlet, has no listening ear, what are their choices? It's shop the market and eventually get that better job where I leave the organization, and then HR can record that they left when they got a better job offer, okay? But we need to be fixing these bad days.
Well, great stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess that's a wrap.
Let's perhaps wrap it up. So just in summary, think about this. There's a lot of volatility in today's workforce on the employer and the employee side. Employers are making big changes. It's a different market than we've had before. The employees are tolerating, we think, these changes. There's not a lot of statistics that would show that things are as bad as they might really be. And so your employees are at risk of exit. Your databases are not showing why your employees are leaving, but there are so many good proactive opportunities for you to impact the retention of your great employees in so many positive ways, whether it's exit interviews, open door policies, or great implemented engagement surveys. Employers that tackle these things will have the best retention of their employees for the future. And it's something they can do year-round, every year for the rest of their business history.
Compensation isn't the only way to compete.
It may be an element, but it is not the core of this particular issue.
Yeah. Great stuff.
Awesome. Really good information. Thank you, Rod.
Love the compliment of statistics and backed it up with actionable items.
Absolutely.
Love that.
I like the idea that we offer actionable items in our podcasts.
Yep.
Things you can do. All right. Okay, well, thank you, Rod.
Thank you.
For our listeners and viewers, please hit the like button and subscribe button because Rod gets $1,000 every month.
What? Yeah.
He needs the money.
Reinforcement. There we go.
All right. So thank you all for joining our Smarter HR podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.